Hey YouTube, coming at you with a video looking at what I think is going to be the meta next season and what is going to be counter meta next season. So uh, basically what I'm just going to do is I'm going to go through the list of like the top 20, 30 Pokemon because I think there's going to be some little changes here, but I actually think the main meta is going to stay somewhat the same. Then we're going to talk about where I think the new Pokemon boosted Talonflame stuff is going to be on the rankings. And then we're going to go, okay, if this is what the meta is going to look like now, what can we do? So first things first is the current meta of this season was basically the top 20 is pretty accurate, more or less, right? Carbink, Lickitung, Gligar, Swampert, Registeel saw a lot less of. Steelix I didn't see a ton of either. Clodsire saw a bunch of. Pelipper, Sableye, Cresselia, Serperior at 23. Where is Lanturn on this list? Did I miss Lanturn? Okay, Lanturn should be somewhere around here. That was essentially the meta, right? The ASAN slash. You saw ASAN slash a lot. Defense Deoxys is always there. Saw an uptick in Azumarill this season. But I think that was the main meta from this season. So what is changing for next season? So first things first is Medi. Medi may not be ranked number 1. I would not put it any lower than 5 to 10. Realistically, it's gonna be top 10 for sure. Like I said, Psychic is a downgrade, but you can run Dynamic Punch, you can run Counter Ice Punch. If you watched my video this morning, there's a bunch of combo of moves you can use there. It still has Counter, still has Ice Punch, still has its bulk. It'll be fine. It'll still be a top meta. I'm just gonna go what else is nerfed first, and then I'm gonna go what's nerfed first, and then I'm gonna go what's boosted, and then I'm gonna go with the effects on other Pokemon because Lickitung is one that and Carbink come to mind immediately. So that was the main nerf on Medi. Steelix was, I think some people picked up Steelix a bit in the ending. I think Steelix just takes a major hit, right? You have Break and Swipe, which the main strategy was just to lower your opponent's attack. You can't really do that now. We don't know the stats now. I'm going to assume it's like a Zap Cannon, 67%, something like that. You now have a Talonflame boost, Fire. You now have a Bubble boost, Azumarill, which is a Fairy, right? So it resists your Dragon Tail and Break and Swipe. You have Lanturn, which you may see more of, which is kind of like depending if it's running Spark or Water Gun, right? So I think Steelix is going to drop outside of the top 20 for sure. Like, I would not be surprised if Steelix drops to like 30, 40, 50th rank here, because I think like what's coming up and just having that nerf on Break and Swipe, I think it's substantial for what it's going to do. Is there any other main nerfs here? Buff, Break and Swipe nerf, buff, Psychic nerf, right? So there's your 2 nerfs. So Medi will go down a bit. I think Steelix will go down a lot. In terms of buff, so Poliwrath was already at number 10. I kind of disagree with Poliwrath being at 10 to start with, but it's ranked 10 on PvPoke here. But if you are theoretically just running Counter, Power Punch, Ice Punch, and getting an Icy Wind, in theory, you'll get boosted in the rankings. I don't think it will though, because the rankings incorporate how you match up against the top ranked Pokemon. And if you're a Poliwrath with Counter Power Ice Punch, and you now have to deal with or Icy Wind, and now, well, Talonflame's kind of like an evenish matchup because Incinerate's not, you're still resisting Incinerate, but then like more Azumarills, more Lanturns, less Steelix, Medi will still be there in the top. Gligar is not going anywhere, right? This really doesn't change anything for Gligar. I'll go over what doesn't change. Gligar won't change. Clodsire kind of gets a boost, right? Because that matchup with Medi was kind of close because they can land the Psychic, but now Clodsire is probably a little stronger. So I think like, although Poliwrath is probably better, I don't think it actually is better in the rankings. I think Azumarill, let's just go with the ones that get the obvious boost. I think Azumarill gets a boost. The fact that you now have more fires, not just Talonflame, right? Ninetales, Some people may use Marowak, stuff like that, right? So the fact that Fire is getting boosted could scare off grasses a little bit. Lanturn we know is still going to be everywhere. Medi matchup with Psychic was actually quite close. So Medi Psychic versus your Bubble Poliwrath is actually quite a close matchup. Now if they're not running Psychic or the Psychic is much lower, you're going to win that matchup. So I would expect Azumarill to jump a bunch at 44. Could it be? I'm sure Clodsire is running Poison Sting, so that could be rough there. But there's still a lot of other Pokemon that you can beat with the Bubble. And getting the Bubble buff will help you against Carbink and Gligar. So I'm going to go on record and say Azumarill's jumping to the top 20 ranking. Talonflame was down in the gutters, 223. Talonflame, 223. Where do I think it's going to be? The question is, do I think it's going to be in the top 20? The buff to Incinerate is a ton. It moves it above Counter as the best move for damage energy generation combo, right? It's a major buff. Question is, how does that compare to the rest of the Great League? Talonflame still deals with two issues. One, it's a 5-turn Incinerate user. Two, it's a non-XL Pokemon in what is starting to become a very XL heavy league, right? So yes, Incinerate is buffed, but Carbink is still there. Swamperts and Lanturns are still there. Even in some of these neutral matchups, I think it's going to be. I think on Clodsire, I think I'm probably going to switch to Poison Sting now. I said Machop was always better, but I think with Azumarill's rising and Serperior is maybe still there and Talonflame, I think you have to run Poison Sting now. So I think Talonflame will jump hard. There's a lot of water in the top 20. Whiscash is getting Scald. Poliwrath Scald is buffed. So if Talonflame, I think Talonflame just on Incinerate alone is probably going to be a top 20 ranked Pokemon. I'm questioning whether in practice it is as strong as the ranking is going to make it out to be. So that's your rise. Azumarill is going to rise. Poliwrath, like I said, is going to think, Wigglytuff is going to rise. The thing is with Wigglytuff, 156, I did the analysis yesterday. Wiggly is you win in the 2-shield, right? You're just dominating in the 2-shield, especially now being able to lower your opponent's attack. So it's a 2-shield domination. In the 1-shield here, this is what the 1-shield rankings are. You know, if one of your best wins before was against Medi, and you're going to see less Medis. It won't be a top 20 Pokemon just because it's a Charm user, and Charm users will never be a top 20 Pokemon realistically in the Great League meta. So I think Wiggly will jump up to like top 50. I think people will use it, but I don't think it's gonna be meta by any means necessary. So those are the ones that I think are the main buffs. Toxicroak, and I don't think Toxicroak. So Toxicroak at 129, and Vigoroth is an interesting one actually. So Toxicroak, I think still. I guess the trade-off of Toxicroak versus Vigoroth is that Vigoroth, Gligar is not going anywhere. You now have Talonflame, which is going to show up more. So I think Vigoroth is probably, with that Rock Slide, better. I think Vigoroth for sure goes up to the top, and if Medi's less, I think Vigoroth goes. And Lickitung, I'm going to talk about Lickitung in a second, the sort of secondary ones. I think Vigoroth is going to be a top 20 Pokemon, and I can see it being used quite often as like an answer to like Lickitung and Carbink, and just generally a safe swap. I think Toxicroak's going to be fine. I don't think it's going to be meta. I think people are going to use it. I think it's a nice upgrade. I think Shadow Ball is a good coverage move. I don't think it makes it meta. I think it's just like there. And then sort of secondary effects are, what does it do with all these other Pokemon? So Carbink, I'd say probably going to be your new number one. It's Carbink or Lickitung as the new number one ranked in my opinion. Just because Carbink's going to be able to, just has the bulk. being able to handle all these new fires that you're going to see quite easily. And if you scare off a bit of the grass, and then Lanturn, that matchup is okay, right? So, and Gligar's not going anywhere, Licktung's not going anywhere. So I think that Carbink is probably still near the top, if not the top. Lickitung, if there's less Medi, well, depends, right? I said if you're seeing more Medi with Power Punch and Dynamic Punch, it's probably worse for Lickitung. If you're just seeing less Medi overall, like Psychic just takes Medi out of the meta, which I don't think will. I think Medi will still be very meta. Then you could see an increase in Lickitung. These other Pokemon, I don't think there's a ton of different effects. Like maybe with more, like Swampert still seems like a pretty safe top 5 to me, right? Because you now have more, you do okay against Azumarill. Clodsire gets a bump, which Swampert deals with easily. The Medi matchup was close before, and now you know they're really only going to be able to throw Ice Punch against you, so that helps you in that matchup. So I think Swampert is maybe a slight uptick in Swampert, which is already like a pretty meta Pokemon. Like I said, Clodsire should get a raise. I would almost always now run it with Poison Sting. There are a lot more Pokemon with water, like Scald now, though. Like Whiscash and Poliwrath, Scald is boosted and stuff like that. So it could get a bit lower from that perspective, but just with its bulk, Poison Sting, Fast Move, Sludge Bomb, if you're seeing more Azumarills, right? So you're probably going to get a bump in Clodsire. Whiscash, depends. Blizzard is still the recommended moveset, sort of. If you take off bait dependent, it is Scald, so Whiscash will be right around where it is. I'm trying to think if there's any other Pokemon. Oh, Lanturn, right? I mentioned Lanturn 50 times already. Talonflame, Azumarill. You do better against Medi now. Maybe less grass and Serperior. So Lanturn should rise. The thing with Serperior is an interesting one because people are going to be scared of Talonflame for a while. But if all these water Pokemon, Poliwrath and Whiscash and other water Pokemon got buffed, and you're now seeing way more fires, which also scares off one of your biggest previous weaknesses, which was a Sandslash as the Steel Ice. Yes, you're going to see some more fires, but you can easily cover that with like Carbink and something like that. Maybe you're going to see less A Sandslashes. So I think Serperior, even though Talonflame is going to get a bump, even though I'm going to go on record and say this, even though Serperior, which is probably 23 right now, even if Serperior gets a low, I think it's probably going to hang around 23, 25, somewhere around there. If it does move down to 30, I actually think it will have more play this season. Because you already had to deal with Gligar, you already had to deal with a Sandslash, right? So what's the trade-off now? Maybe a little less a Sandslash, maybe a little more Talonflame, but also more Azumarill and more Whiscash and more stuff like that. So I think it's probably gonna be around the same there. Like I said, Gligar, there's no real change to Gligar. What else did I say was meta? Cress. Oh, Sableye is an interesting one. I kind of mentioned this before. I don't think Sableye becomes non-meta. I think Sableye is going to have a little more trouble this season because the Lanturn matchup is already not great. If there's less Medi and there's more Lickitungs, that's more normal typings that you have problems with. If there's more Vigoroth, Vigoroth's an interesting one. Well, I got to run that Sims. Let me just put it in here of Sableye versus Vigoroth with Rock Slide. Because one of the problems, you beat Vigoroth before because Counter's resisted and Body Slam's resisted. But Rock Slide is not resisted. And Foul Play is not resisted either. So I think you actually won comfortably with Sableye before. Now it's a very, very close matchup. It's a win, but it's a close matchup. Right? You benefit from Counter and Body Slam being resisted as well. But Rock Slide, look at that improvement. Look at that. 8 versus 124, as opposed to if you put in Bulldoze, you'd probably be way 5. Okay, interesting. Oh, but they're baiting this. Are they baiting the Rock Slide here? No, yeah. So I bet you if you bait a Body Slam and land a Rock Slide, then maybe you can get to another one. I don't know. So Sableye, maybe take a slight decrease. Other flyers maybe take a slight decrease. Mandibuzz, right? Charizard, right? Because if everyone's hunting Talonflame, they're going to get caught in the crossfire. So maybe a little less flyers, which is why I think Serperior could get actually a little bump. And then, yeah, we'll see a little more Wiggly. But I think for the most part, that is going to be the Great League meta. So the question is, now that that is the Great League meta, how do you counter the Great League meta? So in my opinion, there was two things that came to my mind for countering the Great League meta if this is the way it's going. And the first one was just dragons, right? You have dragons which will resist fire, they will resist grass, and they will resist electric and water from Lanturn, right? So you're resisting basically Talonflame, you're resisting Serperior, we're resisting Lanturn. I think and potentially with all these fires, a Sandslash is now a little less relevant. So I think Guzzlord, Dragonite, Zweilous, Dragonair, maybe Altaria is just going to get caught in the crossfire too. I think all of those get a pretty big bump this season. So if I'm looking to build a team, I'm sure that I will be building teams to grind around probably Dragonair, right? Because if Dragonites, you're not doing as much resisted. Yeah, plus actually the one thing I didn't even mention is if you're seeing a lot less Steelix, it should just make dragons a huge bump overall. So that was the first one that came to mind. The second one that came to, I actually don't think there was any. There was like a rock was interesting to me, but not just pure rock. It's something like Cradily, the grass rock Pokemon, right? Because I think your meta is going to shrink to probably more flyers, less ice, less steels, more grass, maybe more grass, maybe less grass, more water. So I think something like Cradily is going to be a sneaky pick against some of the main meta Pokemon. I'm just going to go down the list and see if there's anything that just like pops out at me. So the first, like Dragon was for sure on my mind. And then something like Cradily, Abomasnow. Abomasnow is going to be a little riskier with the fires. But again, if you see an uptick in Azumarills and you see an uptick in just water Pokemon, and you see an uptick in, if there are some grass around, I think Abomasnow. So basically those dual typings that can kind of cover water, grass, flying combos sort of there. I think those will have a nice uptick. The normal typings are, and maybe it was normal typings and it just depended on Medi, and it really lives or dies with Medi. Because you have these normal typings, which were all generally strong, right? Lickitung obviously being the main meta one. And then you have double Vigoroth, Greedent, Diggersby, sort of top 35 ranked Pokemon. Their only weakness is counter users. So the question is, what is the trade-off between maybe lower Medi versus potentially higher Vigoroth and Toxicroaks? Because if you're seeing more Vigoroth and Toxicroaks, it's probably a wash in terms of whether the normals get that bump. A lot of these normal typings, besides Lickitung, as you're seeing here, double kick, Vigoroth counter, Greedent, Mudshot, Diggersby, Mudshot. They're not moves that are conducive to flyers, right? They're all, unless they're like a normal typing flyer and counters neutral and double kicks neutral, any sort of pure flyer in Charizard, any dragon like Dragonite, like Flying Dragon, Dragonite, Altaria, your counter and double kick and Mudshots are resisted, which make those matchups worse. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how the meta shakes out. If you had to ask me right now, put my all-star team together, who am I putting out there if I want to go on the biggest win streak right to start the season? It is probably going to be something like Lickitung, I think it's going to be something like Gligar, Lickitung, and something Carbink. It's 2, 3, and 4. Wow, how creative of you. But yeah, it's going to be something like that. It's going to be something like no, because then you're double weak to water, and there should be an uptick in water. You can't do that. You can't do that. Who are my flying Pokemon that are not Talonflame? Pelipper or Lanturn. But I feel like everyone's going to be hunting Lanturn. I feel like everyone knows Lanturn is going to get a huge buff because of everything else, and people are going to hunt Lanturn. They'll pair, if they want to try Talonflame, they'll pair it with 2 Pokemon to beat Lanturn. So I think Lanturn's going to get hunted, and that's why I wouldn't use it immediately on top. I think Lickitung is generally still just your safest Pokemon to use. I still feel like Gligar is so strong because if you're going to see more, I think Lickitung, Gligar are my 1 and 2 because Lickitung is just potentially less medis, just generally just super safe swap anyways, and Gligar is something that really only got punished by ice Pokemon. Not true, like you're weak to water, but some of those matchups are kind of evenish depending on how much wing attack and aerial dig damage you can do. But your main weakness was getting hit with ice, and if there's more fires and more Lanturn, there's probably less ice out there. So my guess is Lickitung, Gligar, and then there's a third. I mean, you have coverage for Steel to a certain extent. I would probably try and grab a better flyer cover. That's why I put in Carbink first, but Carbink doesn't work because then you're kind of like double weak to water. But you need a third to cover flyers because at best you have wing attack aerial ace on Gligar, which is going to be like not amazing to go against flyers. And then Lickitung, you obviously can't do anything with the power whip. You have to just rely on your Lick and Body Slam, which is not a bad combo unless it's like a Mandibuzz, right? Something like a Mandibuzz would just destroy Gligar, Lickitung. So you need something to, that's why I put Carbink in first, but that's kind of a risky, because then you have to deal with Swampert. So it's something to deal with Swampert, but can also deal with, that's why something to deal with Swampert, but can also deal with flyers. And that's why I said Cradily will be good. Abomasnow will be good. Again, I wouldn't make those 2 as my top picks, but something along those lines would be good. And that's how I think the meta is going to shake out. I think it's going to be a lot of the same Pokemon. Yeah, less Steelix, maybe a little less Medi. I still think Medi's going to be pretty strong. More Clodsire, more Waters, more Whiscash. Probably, I'm still saying probably decent amount of Serperior. I think a huge uptick in Dragons. If I think Dragon is the way to go, my third. No, I can't do that because then Gligar and Dragons are both weak to ice, so you can't run that team. But that's why I think Dragons are also gonna be good because I think there's probably less ice overall. But yeah, I think that is my thoughts. That's my thoughts on meta and what is anti-meta to start off. But I will use a bunch of these Pokemon to test them out. Right? I'm gonna use. Let me know in the comments below. Actually, let me know in the comments below, and I'll ask this question in my tomorrow videos. What Pokemon you want me to use first? I plan to use all of them. Especially all the ones I covered in this morning's video. Whiscash, Poliwrath, Gligar, Talonflame, Ninetales. I plan to use all of them over the week. Let me know if you have a preference of which ones you want to see early on. But anyways, that is it. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.